Welcome back, everyone, and if you're new here, I'm so glad you found the channel. We're on an exciting journey to reach 10k subscribers by next year, and every like, comment and subscription brings us one step closer. Your support means everything. Now, let's jump into today's video. The coffee had grown cold in Dr. Emily Reed's favourite NASA mug, untouched for the past 3 hours as she stared at the holographic display floating before her. The night shift at NASA's Xenobiology division was typically her time to catch up on routine analysis, but nothing about tonight's data was routine. Her office, tucked away in a quiet corner of the facility, had become an impromptu command centre as more and more anomalous readings poured in from Prometheus Echo. The deep space probe had been silently monitoring the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter for months, its sophisticated sensors searching for potential mining sites rich in rare Earth elements. Reed had helped design its biological detection systems herself, calibrating them to identify organic compounds that might indicate prehistoric microbial life. Instead, they had found something that defied every parameter in their database. Dr. Reed? Lisa Chen, her graduate assistant, appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd been awake as long as Reed had. The third wavelength analysis just completed. You're going to want to see this. Reed pushed away from her desk, the wheels of her chair silent on the polished floor. The main display wall flickered to life as Chen transferred the data, filling the room with a soft blue glow. The meteorite's composition was unlike anything they'd encountered, a complex matrix of organic and metallic elements that pulsed with an eerily regular rhythm. "Run it again," Reed commanded, her fingers drumming against the cold metal desk. She'd learned long ago that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence, and what she was seeing qualified as beyond extraordinary. Behind her, screens displayed real-time data streams from the probe, numbers and graphs that told a story too bizarre to believe. The metallic taste of recycled air filled her lungs as she watched the results populate her screen for the fourth time. They hadn't changed. The meteorite contained structures that resembled bacterial cells, but their organization was unlike anything found on Earth. More disturbing were the faint traces of technological components, integrated into their structure microscopic patterns that appeared almost manufactured. "Check the historical database," Reed ordered, pulling up comparative analyses from previous missions. "Look for anything similar in the Mars sample returns, the lunar studies, anything." Chen worked quickly, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard. "Nothing in the Mars data, nothing from Luna. Wait." She paused, frowning. "There's a partial match in the deep archive. A fragment found in Antarctica 50 years ago, but the file's been classified. I can only access the basic metadata." Reed was about to respond when another alert caught her attention. On the main screen, Prometheus, Echo's high-resolution camera, had captured something new. The meteorite's surface wasn't simply rough, it was covered in markings. What had initially appeared to be natural formations resolved into distinct patterns under the probe's enhanced imaging. "Lisa, get me everything we have on archaeological patterns associated with early warning systems, and then..." She reached for her phone, hesitating for just a moment before making the call. "Get me Dr. Blake in archaeology. Now." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity. More team members were called in, each new set of eyes bringing fresh perspective to the growing mystery. When Dr. Thomas Blake arrived, his normally pristine Oxford shirt wrinkled from a hasty departure from some formal dinner, the office had transformed into a hub of controlled chaos. Blake's expertise in ancient civilizations had seemed tangential to their work until now, but as soon as he saw the images, his reaction confirmed Reed's worst fears. The colour drained from his face as he studied the patterns, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled up his own files. "I've seen these before," he whispered, tracing the patterns with a finger that shook almost imperceptibly. "They're in caves in Egypt, temples in Cambodia, buried cities in Peru." His tablet displayed photographs from various archaeological sites, each one showing markings that matched those on the meteorite with unsettling precision. Every civilization that recorded these symbols vanished shortly after. They all left the same warning about a plague that fell from the stars. Reed felt a chill run down his spine despite the room's carefully regulated temperature. The International Space Station is closest to the meteorite's trajectory. They could retrieve it for study within days. "Emily." Blake grabbed her arm, his grip urgent. The use of her first name, rare in their professional relationship, emphasized his concern. "These warnings, they're specific. Every culture used different words, different symbols, but they all described the same thing. A sickness that doesn't just kill. It changes. It adapts. It wants something." The next 48 hours transformed NASA's normally methodical bureaucracy into a whirlwind of emergency meetings and classified briefings. Reed found herself shuffled from one secure conference room to another, repeating her findings to an ever-expanding circle of increasingly high-ranking officials. The bags under her eyes grew darker, but sleep seemed impossible with each new dataset, revealing more impossible characteristics of their discovery. "The Chinese have spotted it," announced Director Phillips during a particularly tense meeting in the facility's highest security briefing room. The windowless space felt even more claustrophobic than usual as he pulled up satellite imagery on the main display. Their new Deep Space Telescope array picked up the anomaly 6 hours ago. They're already prepping their own retrieval mission. Reed watched the faces around the table, noting how the military representatives sat straighter at this news. What had begun as a scientific discovery was rapidly becoming a political powder keg. The Americans had found it first, but the Chinese had the closest vessel capable of interception, a new station in high orbit that they'd claimed was purely for scientific research. "We can have the ISS in position within 5 days, Colonel Harrison stated, his uniform pristine despite the late hour. "Commander Hayes and her crew are the best trained professionals we have for handling potential biocontainment scenarios." "And if the samples are dangerous?" someone asked from the back of the room. "If the warnings Dr. Blake discovered are accurate?" All eyes turned to Blake, who had spent the past 2 days correlating archaeological records from sites around the world. His presentation screen showed a dizzying array of ancient warnings, each one telling variations of the same story. He stood, straightening his jacket. He'd barely left the facility since that first night, and it showed in his rumpled appearance. "The civilizations that left these warnings were advanced for their time," he began, his voice steady, despite his obvious fatigue. "The Egyptians who carved the first warnings we found had astronomical knowledge they shouldn't have possessed. The temple complex in Cambodia shows evidence of sophisticated metallurgy centuries ahead of its time. The ruins in Peru." He paused, clicking to a new image. "They had technology we still can't explain." The image showed what appeared to be a mechanical device embedded in ancient stone, its purpose unclear but its complexity undeniable. Every culture that encountered this gift made incredible advances in a very short time. Every one of them chose to study it. Every one of them disappeared within a generation, but not before trying to warn others. Reed stood, moving to the front of the room. She'd prepared for this moment, knowing that fear could shut down their only chance to understand what they'd found. "The ISS's containment facilities are the most advanced ever created," she argued, bringing up schematics of the station's specialized laboratories. "The isolation chambers use multiple, redundant containment systems. Nothing can enter or leave without passing through a series of airlocks and decontamination protocols." She turned to face the room directly, meeting each person's gaze. Commander Hayes and her crew train constantly for first contact scenarios. They're the best prepared humans in history for handling extraterrestrial samples. If there's even a chance these bacteria could advance our understanding of life beyond Earth or lead to technological breakthroughs, we have to take it. The alternative is letting our competitors take that chance instead. The debate raged for hours. Military officials worried about national security implications. Politicians fretted about public reactions if the mission went wrong. Scientists argued about containment protocols and research priorities. Through it all, Blake's ancient warnings loomed on the screens, a silent reminder of past civilizations that had faced this choice and lost everything. In the end, ambition and fear of falling behind drove the final decision. As Reed watched the votes come in, she caught Blake's eye across the room. His expression carried a weight that made her stomach clench. "The warnings," he said quietly as they left the conference room. "They all mention a choice, a moment when humanity would have to decide its own fate. I always thought it was metaphorical, but now..." He gripped her arm just as he had that first night. "What if we're not containing it? What if we're releasing it? What if that's exactly what it wants?" Before Reed could respond, her phone buzzed with a priority message. The ISS crew had already been notified. Initial retrieval preparations were beginning. She looked down at the screen, at Commander Hayes' acknowledgement of the mission parameters, and wondered if they had just started something that could never be stopped. Aboard the International Space Station, Commander Anna Hayes stood in the observation module, watching Earth rotate below as she absorbed the mission briefing. 20 years of spaceflight experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and every instinct she had was screaming that this mission was different. The station itself seemed to sense it. The usual mechanical symphony, the hum of life support, the subtle vibrations of adjusting solar panels, the periodic clicks of expanding and contracting metal felt somehow muted, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Her crew moved through their preparation procedures with professional precision, but she noted the extra checks, the lingering glances at sensor readings, the way hands hesitated just slightly before touching controls. "Run the containment protocols again," Hayes ordered, watching as her crew moved through the station's research module with practiced efficiency. "I want every system checked twice." Specialist Mike Walker nodded, his movements graceful in the zero-gravity environment he called home for the past 3 months. As the station's most experienced EVA specialist, he would pilot the Retrieval drone, a responsibility that had left visible tension in his shoulders since the mission briefing. "Containment pod diagnostics are green across the board," he reported, his gloved hands dancing across the control panel. "Environmental seals at 100%, radiation shielding optimal, and the new quantum sensors Dr. Reed requested are online." He paused, frowning at a secondary display. "Though I'm still not sure what they're supposed to be looking for." "Anything that doesn't fit our understanding of physics," Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the station's lead physicist, answered from her position at the main monitoring station. Her usual calm seemed slightly forced as she calibrated the array of specialized instruments surrounding the containment area. "The bacterial structures in the probe's scans, they don't follow normal rules of molecular behavior. We need to be ready for anything." Hayes drifted to the observation window, ostensibly to check the Retrieval drone's external housing, but really to gather her thoughts. The meteorite's trajectory had shifted again, adjusting course in ways that defied natural orbital mechanics. The official explanation involved complex gravitational interactions, but she'd piloted enough spacecraft to know what natural movement looked like. This was different, deliberate. "Commander?" Lieutenant Jack Foster, the station's communications officer, called from the doorway. "We're receiving updated telemetry from Prometheus Echo, the meteorite. It's changed course again." and there's something else. Hayes followed him to the communication center, where multiple screens displayed the probe's latest data. The meteorite's surface patterns had shifted, rearranging themselves like pieces of a puzzle, seeking the correct configuration. More disturbing was the faint luminescence that now surrounded it, a blue-green glow that pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost biological. "Send everything to Dr. Reed's team," Hayes ordered, studying the new patterns, "and get me a direct line to Dr. Blake. Those symbols he showed us, I want to know if they've seen these configurations before." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation and mounting tension. Every system check revealed nominal operations, yet Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The station's sophisticated sensors detected no radiation, no unusual energy signatures, nothing to justify the growing sense of unease that seemed to affect the entire crew. Walker spent hours in simulation, practicing the retrieval maneuver until his movements were automatic. The drone's robotic arms would need to secure the meteorite with precise pressure enough to hold it steady without risking damage to its unusual surface structures. Hayes watched him run through another perfect simulation, noting how his hands shook slightly when he thought no one was looking. "Talk to me, Mike," she said quietly during a brief break between runs. "What's bothering you?" Walker was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the drone's control panel. "You ever see something so wrong that your brain can't quite process it?" he finally asked. "Those patterns on the meteorite, they remind me of circuit boards, but they're changing, growing. And sometimes, when I'm running the simulations..." He hesitated. "Sometimes I swear they're watching us back." Before Hayes could respond, the station's proximity alarms blared to life. The meteorite had changed course again, but this time its trajectory would bring it much closer to the station than anticipated. The retrieval mission, originally scheduled for the next day, would need to happen within hours. "All personnel to stations," Hayes announced over the internal comm system. "This is not a drill. Retrieval operation begins in 90 minutes. Full containment protocols are now in effect." As her crew rushed to their positions, Hayes took one last look at Earth through the observation window. The blue planet hung peaceful and unaware below them, its inhabitants going about their lives with no knowledge of what was about to happen aboard humanity's furthest outpost. The retrieval drone systems hummed to life, its arms extending like a metallic predator preparing to grasp its prey. Inside the station, airlocks sealed and containment fields activated, creating layers of protection against whatever they might bring aboard. But as Hayes watched the meteorites approach on the main screen, she couldn't shake the feeling that their sophisticated containment systems were meaningless, like using a butterfly net to catch a hurricane. The retrieval drone's arms moved with precision that belied the tension filling the ISS's observation module. Through the reinforced windows, Commander Hayes watched as the metallic appendages approached the meteorite with almost surgical delicacy. The object's blue-green luminescence had intensified during its approach, casting ethereal patterns across the drone's polished surface. "Distance to target 15 meters, Walker announced from his control station, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The neural implant at the base of his skull pulsed with a soft blue light. Standard technology for space missions now, allowing direct interface with station systems and constant monitoring of vital signs, initiating final approach sequence. Dr. Tanaka monitored the array of sensors surrounding the retrieval area, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. Energy readings are fluctuating. There's some kind of quantum resonance I've never seen before. It's almost like the meteorite is scanning the drone." "Define scanning," Hayes demanded, her hand hovering near the emergency abort switch. "The energy patterns." Tanaka adjusted her displays, bringing up complex waveform analyses. "They're changing in response to our technology. Adapting. It's like watching a computer network probe for vulnerabilities, but on a quantum level. Before Hayes could respond, the drone shuddered. Its movements became erratic for a fraction of a second before stabilizing. On Walker's control panel, warning lights flickered and died. Brief power fluctuation in the guidance systems, he reported, his fingers flying over the controls. Secondary systems compensating. Wait! He leaned closer to his display. The meteorite's surface temperature is rising. The patterns are moving. Hayes moved to his station, watching as the geometric designs on the meteorite's surface began to shift and flow like liquid metal. The drone's cameras captured every detail in ultra-high resolution patterns that resembled both circuit boards and organic cells, rearranging themselves into increasingly complex configurations. All readings still within acceptable parameters. Dr. Reed's voice crackled through the comm system from her position in the lab module. She had arrived on the last supply ship, insisting on overseeing the analysis personally. But these bacterial formations, they're reorganizing themselves. The activity levels are increasing exponentially. Through the observation window, Hayes watched as the drone's arms finally made contact with the meteorite. The moment of touch seemed to stretch into infinity. The object's glow intensified at the point of contact, spreading along the drone's metallic limbs like bioluminescent veins. "Containment pod is sealed," Walker announced, guiding the drone back towards the station. "Structural integrity at 100%. No signs of radiation or anomalous energy signatures." He paused, frowning at his display. The interference with the guidance system is back, but manageable. The drone shuddered again, its movements becoming almost organic as it approached the airlock. The meteorite's patterns had spread to the drone's arms, creating delicate traceries that resembled circuit boards etched in living light. The bacterial structures, Reed's voice held a note of wonder and concern. They're not just changing, they're integrating with the drone's surface material, creating hybrid structures that are both organic and mechanical. The containment pod disappeared into the airlock, with a soft thud that resonated through the station's hull. The decontamination sequence began automatically, ultraviolet light flooding the chamber, followed by a carefully designed cocktail of sterilizing agents. Through it all, the meteorite's glow remained unchanged, perhaps even intensifying. In the lab module, Walker helped Reed secure the containment pod in the station's most advanced isolation chamber. The transparent barriers contained sensors more sophisticated than anything on Earth, capable of detecting changes at the molecular level. Every movement was carefully choreographed, practiced dozens of times in simulation. "Initial scans are complete," Reed announced, her excitement barely contained, despite her professional demeanor. "The bacterial structures, they're unlike anything we've ever seen. They appear to be incorporating elements from the containment pod itself, creating microscopic structures that resemble both organic cells and technological components." Walker peered through the observation port, fascinated by the shifting patterns within the meteorite. "It's almost like they're building something. Look at how they organize themselves, like a living computer constructing itself." The station's artificial gravity hummed quietly as they worked, the familiar sound a stark contrast to the otherworldly scene unfolding before them. Hours passed as they documented every change, every unusual reading. Neither noticed the hairline crack developing in the seal of Walker's protective suit, where a single drop of condensation from the containment pod had landed during transfer. The first sign that something was wrong came during the third shift of observations. Walker complained of a headache, nothing unusual for long hours of detailed work. But then he noticed the strange sensations in his hands, a tingling that seemed to pulse in sync with the meteorite's glow. "I think I need to take a break," he said, his voice slightly strained. "Just feeling a bit off?" Reed looked up from her microscope, concern crossing her face as she noticed the unusual sheen of sweat on Walker's forehead. "Protocol requires immediate quarantine for any symptoms. We can't take any chances." But Walker was already moving toward the door, his movements jerky and uncertain. His neural implant flickered erratically, its usual steady blue pulse now showing hints of the same blue-green luminescence as the meteorite. "No, I just need some sleep. I'll be fine after." The sentence remained unfinished as his body went rigid. The neural implant flared with brilliant light, and Walker's eyes snapped open, now containing the same otherworldly glow. His mouth opened in what might have been a scream, but the sound that emerged carried harmonics that made the station's metal walls vibrate in sympathy. "Emergency lockdown," Hayes' voice blared through the station's comm system. "All personnel to secure stations, medical team to the lab module immediately." But they were already too late. Walker's neural implant had become a bridge between two worlds, the ancient bacteria and modern technology, finding a perfect interface in human neural circuitry. As the medical team approached in their protective suits, he turned to face them with eyes that shimmered like pools of living circuitry. "We only want to help," he said, reaching toward them with hands that were beginning to transform, his flesh seamlessly merging with the technological components of his suit. Patterns like those on the meteorite began spreading across his skin, creating hybrid structures that were neither fully organic nor purely mechanical. "Humanity must be ready. They are coming. We must all evolve." The emergency bulkhead slammed shut, but not before Walker interfaced with a nearby terminal. Throughout the station, systems began responding to his commands, the virus spreading through digital pathways as easily as biological ones. In the hydroponics bay, plants began to twist and change, their cellular structures rewriting themselves under the influence of the spreading contagion. Commander Hayes watched in horror through the security feeds as her crew member, her friend, became something else entirely. In the background, Dr. Reed frantically compiled data, trying to understand what they were facing, while the ancient warnings Dr. Blake had discovered played through her mind with terrible clarity. The ISS's emergency lighting bathed the corridors in a blood-red glow, creating shadows that seemed to move with unsettling purpose. Commander Hayes led her remaining crew through the maintenance tunnels, their magnetic boots clicking against the metal in a rhythm that couldn't quite drown out the other sounds. The soft thud of transformed crew members moving through the ventilation system, the strange harmonic hum that now permeated the station's hull, the occasional burst of static from corrupted communication systems. "Life support is down to 60% capacity," Lieutenant Foster reported, his tablet displaying a rapidly diminishing list of systems still under their control. The screen's glow illuminated the sheen of sweat on his face. "Walker, or whatever he's become, is learning our systems faster than we can lock him out. He's not just interfacing with them anymore, he's rewriting them at the root level." The hydroponics bay, once their pride and joy with its carefully maintained gardens of vegetables and air-purifying plants, had become a nightmare landscape of twisted evolution. Through the reinforced windows, Hayes could see the transformed flora, their leaves now metallic and iridescent, reaching toward passing crew members with unsettling intelligence. The virus had adapted them into living sensors, extending the infected's awareness throughout the station. "The air filtration system in Section C is showing unusual particulate readings," Dr. Tanaka reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. "The concentration is highest near the 3D printing facilities." Dr. Reed worked furiously at a sealed terminal, her fingers flying over the holographic keys as she analysed the latest data. "The virus isn't just spreading through physical contact anymore. It's evolving. Look at this." She pulled up microscopic images of the air filtration systems, revealing something that made Hayes' blood run cold. "It's using our 3D printing facilities to create biomechanical spores. Every time we fabricate replacement parts, we're unknowingly helping it spread." Hayes felt the implications hit her like a physical blow. The station's 3D printing systems were essential for maintaining life support equipment, everything from replacement filters to critical mechanical components. They couldn't simply shut them down, but each use risked further contamination. Even worse, the infected crew members weren't trying to kill them. Their actions showed clear purpose and restraint, as if following some incomprehensible but precise plan. "Commander!" Foster's voice cracked with urgency. "The station's long-range communications array is powering up. Something's trying to broadcast." Through a nearby viewport, Hayes watched as the massive array began to reorient itself. Its panels glowing with the same otherworldly light that now filled infected sections of the station. The mechanical movements had taken on an unsettlingly organic quality, as if the metal itself had come alive. Walker appeared on a nearby screen, his transformed face a disturbing blend of human features and technological enhancement. Patterns of light flowed beneath his skin like living circuits, and his eyes held depths that seemed to extend beyond normal space. "You don't understand what's coming," he said, his voice carrying subsonic frequencies that made their bones vibrate. "We found the warnings too late. They seeded Earth with this gift millions of years ago, but our ancestors weren't ready. They fought it, and they died. We can't make the same mistake." In the adjacent lab module, something massive moved in the darkness. Dr. Albert Patel, the station's lead engineer, had been one of the first infected after Walker. His transformed body had merged with his workstation, becoming a living interface between the virus and the station's systems. Tendrils of biomechanical matter spread from his position like roots, pulsing with data and unknown energies. Hayes watched through a security feed as Patel's fingers, now more like fiber optic cables than human digits, merged with his console. Streams of incomprehensible data flowed across screens faster than human eyes could process. The station systems were being rewritten, optimized, evolved into something that straddled the line between technology and life. "The transformation isn't random," Reed announced, studying readings from the few sensors still under their control. "Look at the pattern of infection. It's targeting our most sophisticated systems first. Neural implants, quantum computers, advanced materials. It's like it's following a blueprint, building something piece by piece." A sudden impact shook the station, sending loose equipment floating in the zero-gravity environment. Through the nearest viewport, Hayes saw something that defied explanation. The station's external repair drones, normally simple machines designed for basic maintenance, had transformed. Their metallic bodies now rippled with organic movement, their sensors replaced by growing arrays that mimicked living eyes. "They're adapting to space," Tanaka whispered, watching as the transformed drones moved with impossible grace. "No human could survive out there unprotected, but they're not exactly human anymore, are they?" The implications struck Hayes like a physical blow. The infected crew members weren't trying to escape or spread to Earth. They were transforming the station itself, turning it into something that was neither fully machine nor fully organic. Each new change seemed to serve a purpose, preparing for something that only they could see coming. "Commander," Foster called out, his voice tight with fear. "You need to see this. The long-range sensors. There's something out there. Multiple objects, massive ones, decelerating from relativistic speeds at the edge of the solar system." Before Hayes could respond, every screen in their section lit up with Walker's transformed face. "Now you understand," he said, his voice carrying echoes of ancient knowledge. "They're coming back. The ones who destroyed Earth's first civilization. The ones we were created to fight. And this time we must be ready." The station shuddered again, but this time it wasn't from any impact. The metal walls themselves seemed to pulse with new life, the virus's transformation spreading through the very structure of humanity's furthest outpost. Through the windows, Earth hung silent and blue, unaware that its fate was being decided in the cold darkness of space. Dr. Reed's hands trembled as she processed the data flowing across her screen. The virus's genetic structure wasn't random, it was a language, a message written in the building blocks of life itself. Through the barricaded door of the backup communications room, she could hear the rhythmic thumping of infected crew members, their movements now perfectly synchronized like components of a single vast organism. "Commander Hayes," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper, "you need to see this." The station's commander pulled herself across the room in zero gravity, her modified railgun never leaving the door. The makeshift weapon had been created from parts of a particle physics experiment, designed to fire magnetized salt rounds that could disrupt the infected's biomechanical systems without risking hull breach. The display on Reed's screen shifted, transforming into a three-dimensional hologram that filled the air between them. Ancient images began to form, projections created by the virus itself, stored within its complex molecular structure. They watched as scenes from Earth's prehistoric past played out before them. A civilization advanced beyond current human technology faced annihilation from something that came from deep space. The holographic beings fought with weapons that bent reality itself, but they were losing. "These aren't just recordings," Reed explained, her scientific mind racing to process the implications. "The virus is a database, a library containing the complete knowledge of a civilization that faced extinction. Look at this." She highlighted sections of code that pulsed with its own inner light. They encoded everything, their science, their history, their mistakes, and their last hope. Through the station's windows, the stars seemed to shimmer differently now, hiding an approaching threat that humanity in its current form had no hope of detecting, let alone fighting. The infected crew members weren't trying to destroy humanity. They were desperately trying to save it, transformed by ancient knowledge into something capable of surviving what was coming. "The transformation process," Reed continued, bringing up new data streams, "it's more sophisticated than we imagined. The virus doesn't just merge technology and biology. It preserves consciousness, memories, personality. Mike Walker is still in there, still himself, just evolved. The Ancient Ones designed it that way to maintain what makes us human, while giving us the capabilities we need to survive." A loud crash interrupted her explanation. Through a breach in the ceiling, tentacles of transformed metal and organic matter began to snake into the room. They moved with liquid grace, each tendril a perfect fusion of technological precision and biological adaptability. At their center, Walker's transformed face emerged, but his expression wasn't hostile, it was pleading. "They're already past Pluto," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the station's metal walls resonate. Patterns of light flowed beneath his skin, forming complex equations and diagrams that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could process. "The virus showed us everything. They're mechanical beings that consume all life, transform it into energy for their vast ships. The ancients fought them for generations before creating us. Their last hope for revenge." Hayes raised her weapon, then hesitated. The railgun's targeting system displayed confused readings, unable to distinguish between organic and mechanical components in Walker's transformed body. "Us?" "The virus was never meant to be a weapon," Walker explained, his biomechanical form pulsing with internal light that cast ever-changing shadows. "It's a gift, an inheritance. The ancients knew they couldn't win their war in time, so they created something that could prepare the next intelligent species. We're not just changing, we're becoming what they couldn't, a form of life capable of fighting back." The station's sensors screamed new warnings. The long-range arrays, now enhanced by viral modifications, detected massive objects moving through the Kuiper Belt. Each one was larger than Earth's moon, decelerating from speeds that should have been impossible. Their very presence seemed to distort space around them. Lieutenant Foster's voice crackled over the emergency comm system, filled with static from increasing electromagnetic interference. "Commander, these readings? Whatever's out there, it's changing course. They've detected us." Dr. Reed's tablet displayed a countdown based on the object's trajectory and speed. The numbers were clear. Humanity had weeks, maybe days, before first contact. The transformed crew members had stopped their assault, forming a circle around Hayes and the survivors. Their message was clear. Time had run out. A choice had to be made. "The virus can be modified," Walker explained, extending a transformed hand that rippled with colours never seen in nature. Beneath his skin, microscopic machines and living cells worked in perfect harmony, creating structures that defied current scientific understanding. "We don't have to lose our humanity. We can transcend it. The ancients learned from their mistakes. The changes can be controlled, directed, but it has to be everyone or no one. Partial transformation creates conflict, division. We saw it in their memories, how their civilization tore itself apart when some chose to change and others didn't." Hayes looked at her remaining human crew, then at the transformed ones. Both groups were still her people, her responsibility. Beyond the station's walls, something older than human civilization was approaching, something that had already destroyed one Earth species. Their ancestors had faced this choice and rejected it, choosing extinction over transformation. Now, millions of years later, their descendants faced the same decision. Through the station's reinforced windows, Hayes watched Earth rotate below them. Billions of unaware humans going about their lives not knowing that their fate hung in the balance aboard a space station infected with something that could either save or fundamentally change them forever. The weight of that choice pressed down on her like physical force. "Show me everything," she commanded, turning to Walker. "No more fragments, no more pieces. I need to see it all." The transformed crew member interfaced directly with the station's systems, and suddenly the control room exploded with holographic displays, the complete memory of an ancient civilization facing its end. Hayes and her remaining human crew watched in horror as scenes of ancient battle played out before them. Mechanical monstrosities larger than cities descended from the skies, their forms defying normal physics. The ancient civilization fought back with weapons that could reshape matter itself, but for every alien vessel they destroyed, 10 more appeared. "They don't just consume life," Walker explained, his voice carrying echoes of ancient knowledge. "They harvest potential. Every species that could one day challenge them is eliminated. They've been doing this for millions of years, moving in cycles through the galaxy. Earth's time has come again." Dr. Reed worked frantically at her terminal, analysing the virus's complete genetic structure. The transformation, it's more than just biological enhancement. The virus contains quantum computational systems. It would allow us to process information at speeds that would seem like precognition. Our bodies would be able to manipulate energy fields, communicate across vast distances instantly. In the hydroponics bay, the transformed plants had begun creating new structures, living computers that merged organic growth with technological precision. The station itself was changing, its metal walls now threaded with veins of biomechanical matter that pulsed with mysterious energies. "They're approaching the Kuiper Belt," Foster reported, his voice tight with tension. "Multiple objects, each one larger than anything humanity has ever encountered. Their energy signatures, they're exactly like the ancient records showed." Hayes made her decision. "Dr. Reed, can you modify the virus? Find a way to maintain more of our current form, while still gaining what we need?" Reed's fingers flew across her keyboard, deep in calculations. "The virus is programmable, adaptable. Yes, I think I can. We don't have to become exactly like them." She nodded towards the transformed crew. "We can direct the evolution, maintain more of our physical form, while still gaining the capabilities we need." "You have hours, not days," Walker warned. "Once they enter the inner solar system, their sensor networks will detect any large-scale energy usage. The transformation has to happen before then, or they'll strike preemptively. Hayes straightened her uniform, a curiously human gesture in the face of such an inhuman situation. "Dr. Reed, begin the modifications. Walker, show her everything the virus can tell us about maintaining human consciousness through the change. Lieutenant Foster, prepare to broadcast on all frequencies. The world needs to understand what's coming and why we're about to change everything." The next few hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Reed's modifications to the virus proved successful in tests on isolated tissue samples. The transformed crew, their bodies adapting continuously, helped integrate the changes into the virus's basic structure. Below them, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that its defenders were about to transform themselves into something that had only existed in science fiction. As Hayes recorded her final message as a purely human being, she looked at her reflection in the station's window. Soon she would be something new, something that could face the cosmic horrors approaching their world. The virus had been created by beings who chose to give their successors a chance, rather than accept extinction. Now, she would do the same for the billions of people below. "To all who received this message," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. "I am Commander Anna Hayes of the International Space Station. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you know about human history and our future. But first, I need you to look up at the sky. Those new stars you've been seeing, they're not stars." The transformation began at dawn over the Pacific Ocean. As humanity faced its greatest challenge, the virus spread across the planet in a wave of change, carrying with it the hopes of two civilizations, one long dead and one about to be reborn. The aliens would arrive to find not a primitive species ready for harvest, but something new, something that combined the best of humanity with capabilities they had never expected to face again. From orbit, Earth itself seemed to pulse with new life as billions of humans underwent their transformation together. Cities began to change, buildings and infrastructure evolving alongside their inhabitants. The oceans themselves shimmered with new purpose as marine life joined the transformation, creating a planet-wide network of living technology. And in the space station where it all began, Commander Hayes watched through new eyes as her transformed crew prepared for humanity's first true test among the stars. Their bodies now housed technologies beyond imagination, but their minds, their souls, remained their own. They were no longer just human, but they were still themselves, and they were ready. The ancient defense system had done its job. Humanity had evolved. And as the first massive alien ships entered the solar system, they encountered something unprecedented. A young species that had inherited the legacy of their ancient enemies, but had transformed it into something entirely new. The real war was about to begin, but this time, Earth was ready. In the end, the virus hadn't been a plague at all. It had been a gift, passed down through millions of years, waiting for the right moment to help humanity take its next great leap. As Hayes interfaced with the station's evolved systems, preparing to coordinate Earth's defense, she felt a deep connection to those ancient beings who had faced extinction with hope, rather than despair, choosing to give their successors a chance not just to survive, but to triumph. The sky above Earth began to shimmer as humanity's transformed defenses came online. The real test was about to begin, but for the first time in the galaxy's long history of cosmic predation, the hunters were about to become the hunted. Humanity's next chapter was about to be written among the stars,